My name is Anastasia Lin. I'm a Canadian actress, and I'm a beauty queen. Last year, I was banned from entering China to participate in the Miss World final competition. The Chinese government declared me persona non grata. That's the highest level of diplomatic punishment. I'm probably the only beauty queen in history who's ever been declared a persona non grata. You're probably wondering how this happened, so let me start from the beginning. I was born in China, in Hunan province. I was a model student, raised by one of those Asian tiger moms that you have all heard about. At school, not a lot of these people know about me, is that I was a student leader. One of the things I did at school was to enforce ideological conformity among my classmates. I made my fellow classmates watch hatred propaganda attacking the so-called government's enemy. And I moved to Canada when I was 13. Only then did I realize the extent of my indoctrination. I learned about the truth of Tiananmen massacre, the truth behind all those persecution of ethnic and religious minorities. I have learned the truth behind the hatred propaganda that the Communist Party made me complicit by helping to spread. I realized that I had been lied to all my life. Under the influence of China's state-run media and education system, I was made to feel hate and contempt toward my country's true heroes, the people who are willing to risk their lives to live as a dignified human being. And once I came to understand that, I wanted to find a way to contradict it. As an actress, I've acted in movies that shed light on human rights abuses in China. I have testified in legislatures all around the world. 3 years ago, I started on a journey to use the Miss World pageant to shed light on the abuses in China. Miss World pageant has the motto, Beauty with Purpose. Last year, I won Miss World Canada. And immediately after my win, my father was paid a visit by the China's security force. Under great pressure, he tried to have me abandon my human rights concern. It is the most horrifying experience to know that a person who once made you feel safe is now in danger. It's a common experience for Chinese people all around the world. We even have a saying these days. It's called being invited to tea. That's when the Chinese police issue a vague threat of reprisal if your relatives overseas don't adhere to the correct political view. That's when they show you who has the baton, and they won't hesitate to use it. I am still afraid. I am still concerned about my father's livelihood in China, but as I reflected on what to do, it became clear that silence helps no one. Silence feeds terror. So I continued to speak up. As a result, I was declared persona non grata and barred from entering China to participate in Miss World Final. But the good news is, this year, the Miss World Final is going to be held in Washington, D.C. And the Miss World organization has granted me the Canadian entry. So again, I have the chance to use this spotlight to shed light on one of the most horrific human rights abuse in China right now. That is the organ harvesting of prisoners of conscience. In the United States, the median wait time for a liver transplant is 321 days, just under a year. But in China, numerous hospitals are aggressively recruiting foreign tourists, promising that with a few tens of thousands of dollars, they're able to get a liver, a lung, heart, pancreas, corneas within just a couple of weeks. Due to the influence of Confucius' value of keeping the body intact even after death, Chinese people are extremely reluctant to donate their organs, which means that each organ transplant happened in China, the organ is either being bought or forcibly removed. Liver is a good example to study because in order to perform a full liver transplant, someone has to die. Numerous Chinese publications has boasted about their abilities to perform what is called an emergency liver transplant. That is, within 24 hours of a patient appearing in a hospital with acute liver failure, an donor is located. And they just need to be incredibly lucky that someone has a car crash which made their organ available in order to have the transplant. That just doesn't really happen without an accident. China does not have a national voluntary organ donation. There is large volume of emergency organ transplant performed in China, liver. Over 26% in 2006. How are the Chinese government able to locate a live organ donor with the same blood type of the patient and able to take it on demand within a few hours? That just doesn't happen. The Chinese government claimed that all these organs come from death row inmates, but there aren't nearly enough death row inmates to supply the massively expanded organ transplant industry after 2000. And not to mention that death row inmates have a hepatitis rate as high as 50%, and they had to be executed according to Chinese law within 7 days of their death sentence. UN Special Rapporteur has repeatedly asked Chinese to have an explanation for the organ sources, but the Chinese government never gave one. International investigation has concluded that tens of thousands of Falun Gong practitioners, as well as Uyghur, Tibetans, and house Christians, have been victimized this way, so their organ can be taken and sold for profit. In the late 1990s, 70 to 100 million Chinese people were practicing this peaceful meditation practice of the Buddha school, Falun Gong, rooted in the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. They offered an alternative to communist atheist dogma and money worship. Initially, it was supported by the government as a way to improve health. But the number of Falun Gong practitioners is way higher than the number of Communist Party. Such a large independent group is unprecedented in Chinese communist history. Communists never wanted anybody to compete with them ideologically, however benign. What unfolded was the largest concerted action by the China's security forces since the Maoist era. In a recent report, Freedom House showed that hundreds of thousands of Falun Gong practitioners have been detained without trial, making them the largest group of prisoners of conscience in China, if not the world. In 2001, the party has officially sanctioned the use of torture to force these people to renounce their belief, resulting in a huge number dying in custody. A whole publication industry sprung up to spread anti-Falun Gong propaganda, to vilify and dehumanize Falun Gong practitioners. And all of this, of course, is the key ingredient for a dictator to justify killing, to dehumanize the targeted group. From that point on, the Chinese citizens who practice Falun Gong were outside the protection of the law. And this explains how organ harvesting has come about. With potentially millions of Falun Gong practitioners incarcerated in China's vast prison camp system, they're worth more dead than alive. They're blood typed, and once a blood match is made, they can be simply put under anesthesia and have their organs removed. I want to end this presentation by showing one of the clips from my most recent movie, The Bleeding Edge.
停，他不行了。你还绝不绝食？
你有没有妻子儿女？他们如果遭受这样的经历，你是什么感受？你为什么要当医生？是为了迫害好人吗？
何苦受这个罪呢？
我们这样子对你，你恨不恨我们？
不恨。你们才是这场迫害真正的受害者。为了 做这种丧尽天良的事情。将来这场迫害的真相大白于天下的时候，你的孩子问你，迫害法轮功的时候你在做什么？你们怎么回答？
We are all responsible for our action when we're being confronted with crime against humanity. The mass killing we're talking about today is not a vague concept. The victims are real people, and they're extremely people who seek nothing more than to live as dignified human beings. And as a result, because they don't want to relinquish who they are, the government has killed them on an industrial scale. It is my hope to use this year's Miss World competition to shed light on this atrocity. And I hope after today's talk, you're going to feel the same way. Thank you very much.